Do you love the environment but also kind of want to crush every plant and small animal on the trail? Well, then you might be in the market for a used Jeep Wrangler 4xE. That's right beside me today here, I have a 2023 Jeep Wrangler 4xE. Now, this is a big departure for a Jeep Wrangler. They all look the same for the last 50, 60 years. But this one is a hybrid combination with an electric motor and a traditional engine. Today, we're going to take a walk around the outside. We're going to talk about the common problems, and then we are going to decide if the new generation of Jeep Wrangler is a buy or a bust. Starting up front on our Jeep Wrangler, this is the JLU Wrangler, and style-wise, they look exactly the same as they have for the entire time that Jeep's been a thing. And as we move around the outside here, this is a little bit newer car, so we don't have a ton of cosmetic issues. Chrysler does tend to have some cosmetic stuff. We don't know too much on frame rust yet, but I would absolutely get underneath and look at one and make sure that you don't have any rust starting, because frame rust and body rust even is a common issue with all Jeeps throughout the years. You can see that it does have a vinyl top. You'll want to check those out if you're looking at a used one, because those tops do normally wear out over time. Every, 75, 100,000 miles, if they've been sitting out in the sun, you might have some wear starting on them, and it's a decent expense to have to replace them, but it's not too difficult, and you can pick them up for Facebook Marketplace and things like that without too much of an issue. Overall, it's held up pretty well, and I do like the style on these Jeeps. Under the hood of our Wrangler here, we got a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder engine that makes 270 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. But those aren't the real numbers, because this is a plug-in hybrid. With the electric motor assisting, this makes 375 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque, which is really good numbers for an SUV like this, and completely takes away the stereotypes of old that Jeeps were slow. Now, as far as issues, we have issues with both systems here. Unfortunately, this is a Chrysler product, and Chrysler has had a bunch of problems with their plug-in hybrid vehicles, and the Jeep suffers from some of these problems. Number one issue with the actual engine itself is with the turbo. Now, these small turbo engines that every manufacturer has been going to tend to have more issues than older naturally aspirated engines. However, the problem with this one is usually with the turbo, which is common, but the mileage that the problems crop up is certainly premature on these. Between 70 and 100,000 miles, the turbo will start to leak some oil. The plumbing to it is faulty, pretty common issue. That starves the turbo for oil and then will also destroy your turbo. Pretty common issue on these engines. That is an extremely expensive repair. A lot of them are actually done under warranty, but I expect the problem to crop up again as they age. As far as the actual engine itself, the turbo is the biggest issue. Otherwise, the engine's okay, but you are going to run into turbo issues, which is a major problem. The other is cooling system problems. You got to keep these engines cool, and the cooling fans are known to go out on these as well. Now, moving on to the transmission and the hybrid system, because they are they are integrated as one. There's two electric motors. The first one is up on this side of the engine up here, and that is just kind of responsible for starting the engine, keeping it turning. The other one is integrated as where the torque converter would be inside of the 8-speed automatic transmission. Pretty cool system that they have here if it's reliable. Let's talk about the reliability. Now, to start our conversation about reliability, I will tell you the owner of this, under warranty, has had the battery replaced 3 times already. So that's where our starting point for reliability on these Jeeps. Now, with a fully charged battery, these are rated to go 21 miles. No, that's not a ton, but that's plenty of mileage for most commuters. So it makes a lot of sense for a lot of people to be able to use 21 miles of electric range. They do have a fair amount of battery degradation has been shown over a few years after these are new. So they do seem to lose some of that range pretty regularly. As far as other problems, cooling system for the electrical system, the batteries, the motors, all of that has proven to be pretty unreliable and causes the motors to fail at a premature age as well. The other faults with the electrical and battery hybrid system are just general fault codes. You will frequently probably have a light on the dash saying some error with the system. And it's a variety of sensors, could be the cooling system, could be the motors failing, could be just about anything, could be a small issue or a large one, but fault codes are extremely common on these with the charging system. Now, the 8-speed transmission itself is actually decently reliable. Change the fluid, you're probably all right. I will say that they have been shown to overheat a fair amount if you off-road heavily or tow heavily with them. They're not really built for that extra wear and tear, but in factory form, they're okay. Moving on to the interior in the Jeep Wrangler here, and I will say, I'll give Jeep some credit here that they have vastly improved the interior in these over the years. I used to give them a really hard time back in the mid-2000s, even 2010, 15, I was not really impressed with their interiors at all. Thought they were rough around the edges even for an off-road type vehicle. And while they still have a lot of hard plastic and things, I think they've made them much more comfortable, much more user-friendly, and really don't look too bad overall now. As far as wear and tear, things have held up pretty nicely. This one isn't a super high option or a super low option. It's somewhere right in the middle where a lot of buyers are going to get. It has some nice features like heated steering wheel, heated seats, even though they are cloth. Just some nice features for a day-to-day driver. Now, as these age, I do expect some issues with the electronics. Everything works in this one as intended, but I do expect to see infotainment glitches, maybe some window motors, things like that. One of the things that I could have mentioned on the walk around on the outside is the door hinges. You got to keep lubed up because they will corrode as they age. And if you want to take your doors off, that's going to be a huge barrier there. But if you keep them lubed up, they're pretty much good to go. Now, I mentioned top wear and tear as they age. That is part of it. The other one is top leaks. They are famous across all years forever of having the gaskets and things that seal the top leak, and you'll end up with a wet floor inside. Not much you can really do to avoid it. It's just something you got to fix if you want to keep the water out of the inside of your Jeep. On to the back seat of the Wrangler. And yeah, you are in an off-roader here for sure. Not a ton of leg room. Headroom is okay, but you'd be ducking your head if you roll over. You do have the roll bars up here, but my head's pretty close to those. But actual head height is just fine. Not a lot to talk about really back here. Very basic, hard plastic. The seat position is actually okay, but it is small. You're not in something that's very spacious. It's not the best road trip vehicle out there, but I think you probably already knew that. Now out on the road in our Jeep Wrangler. And I'll tell you what, this is a vehicle that I really want to like. I really do. We're cruising. I got no sound at all in here because we are just in electric right now at low speed. I expect the motor to kick in at some point here before too long. But I like off-roaders. I like fuel efficiency if you can, because that's usually your trade-off when you get something like this. And so the chance to actually have a vehicle that gets good fuel economy and you can go off-roading with is pretty cool. Now, fuel range is always a little tough to talk about in a plug-in hybrid because sometimes it's using the electric, sometimes it's using the gas, sometimes it's using both. The average, I'm just going to give you what the average is on this particular vehicle, is 27.1, which is pretty darn impressive. And right now we are out on the road 37 miles an hour and we have not clicked in to the engine yet. We are still on pure electric. Going around a corner here, we're going to see how the Jeep fares because usually they're pretty rough around corners. But I gotta say, I think Jeep has done a fair amount of work to make these more livable because it's actually driving just fine. Let's get on it. There, the engine kicked in. Plenty of power. The transmission shifted well. I'll tell you what, I've not driven one of these before or a newer Jeep. and I gave the old Jeep Wranglers a really hard time about how they ride. And out on this road, which is fairly smooth, it is riding really, really well. The handling is nice. It's a little light around the corners, handling feeling wise, but it is impressive to have something that's this off-road capable that drives this well on the road. I think it's really nice. Now, as far as suspension, wear and tear, things like that, yes, you are going to, as these age, get into some suspension stuff. Basically anything up front, you're going to have to replace at about 120,000 miles, maybe something like that. Not really different than any other manufacturer, but you're going to run into some issues. I don't have any clunks. The steering feels fairly tight in this one. So I think it's maintenance-wise has been kept up with. Now, the biggest factor for me in why I would choose a Jeep Wrangler over something else is the aftermarket support. If you want to go off-road, there's so many options for lift kits, bumpers, everything you could want to do, you can buy, and at a reasonable price. So that is a huge factor if you're looking for a multi-purpose type vehicle. I also can't ignore that taking the top down in the summertime is one of the coolest features out there. As we came up to a stop sign there, it went back into electric mode, and then as I accelerated again, it went back into starting the engine up again. It actually works pretty seamlessly, surprisingly. I don't notice much in here. I thought it would be more apparent, and it's just not. Yeah, as far as the driving experience and things like that, it's just what I mentioned. Suspension, ball joints, things like that, you're going to have an issue with as they age. Overall, when these are running, I kind of really like it. I would totally buy one. Unfortunately, we already did our under the hood, and there's a lot of problems that I just can't ignore. Back from the test drive, and now it's time to decide if the Wrangler 4xe is a buy or a bust. The test drive did go okay. Now, these are rough around the edges as far as a overall driving experience, but I've come to expect that with a Jeep. They do have a ton of off-road capability and great fuel economy. So on paper, this should be an easy decision. However, reliability is the biggest factor in these reviews. And with 150,000 miles on it, I think you will have been through multiple battery packs, and you will probably have an issue with just about every system on these cars. The reviews out there from actual owners are not very positive. In fact, when I was looking at the common problems for these, the number one thing that I saw was, does anyone have anything positive to say about the 4xe Jeeps? And a few people underneath that did have a few positive things to say, but most of them still had been in the shop multiple times. Now, as far as the market goes, Jeeps actually generally hold their value pretty well. They have a lot of loyal fans out there. However, these ones are actually a little bit cheaper, and I think it's because of some of the issues that they had. With 150,000 miles on, I would expect to pay somewhere around 16, 17 grand for one of these. Now, the issue is you're not going to see a ton out there with 150,000 miles at this point, partly because they're a little bit too new. The other reason is because most of them didn't make it that far. And while I am joking around about it a little bit here today, my decision is extremely easy on this one, and these are a bust. This is a Chrysler product, and they've long had a lot of issues with their plug-in hybrid vehicles. Unfortunately, the Wrangler didn't miss out on those problems. There's too many problems to ignore. The owner of this vehicle, like I said, has had the battery replaced already 3 times. Now, you could get lucky and get a unicorn one that doesn't have any issues. And if they're running, I actually really kind of like them. But the issue is they just don't run that long. If you have one of these and have had a bunch of problems, put those comments down below. I expect those write-ups to be fairly long. If you have had a great experience on them, by some chance, I want to hear all about that too. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next upload.